Muting us through this?
So I was just going to start by explaining, like, hello. So for those who are new to Zoom, down in the left-hand corner, there's a mute button. So you can mute yourself out, and then if you want to jump in and ask a question or make a comment, then just unmute yourself. You can wave. Apparently there's some groovy thing in there somewhere where you can even put a little wave thing, but I may not necessarily see a hand waving. So there's a mute. So there's two people that there's no picture. That may be that they're on iPhones or iPads, something like that. But if you want to stop the video, you can. As in, you can actually click. So in the right hand, you've got mute. In the left hand, I should say, you've got mute, and then there's a stop video. So you can actually click that if for some reason you just don't want us to see you sitting there. And then unclick it and then come back in. So, yes, this is my first webinar, and I'm kind of nervous. So I probably do hope that you will talk to me and engage, because as any of you know me, I'm very good at talking by myself for endless amounts of time. Oh dear. But I probably feel a little bit more self-conscious because it's my very first webinar. And I've been absolutely guaranteed that experiencing it through a webinar and the engaging that goes on will give me exactly the same thing that I love about being in a classroom with people. So I guess in lots of ways, I really do hope you all kind of participate in and talk and ask questions and go through it. I will say there's no doubt that this topic is a massive favourite of mine, like so many things that are my favourites. But I love the whole concept of helping people understand their own journey, their lessons, their life, all that kind of stuff. And that probably stems from the fact of my own journey. And for those who aren't aware, when I was 25, which I don't even want to tell you how many years ago that was now, you know, I was faced a huge healing crisis, and as a result of that, I was very sick, and that took me into a journey initially physically to go to a naturopath and get well. But after the first year, in fact, it was my naturopath who handed me a number and said, this guy sells flower essences, you should get into flower essences, because that's going to be, you know stuff about emotions, you should go there. And at that point, I probably was like, really? Do I? I have no idea. Okay, that's fine. But it did indeed open my world up. And so what a lot of people probably saw me as being anyway back in those days, it's been a journey ever since of going through and experiencing all of some innate knowledge, some experiences, some digesting of things so that I could make sense of my life, the experiences I had. Because if any of you are anything like me, it's not like life goes to plan. 15, I had it all planned out. It's going to be simple and easy. I was just going to cruise it through. Mind you, I did think life stopped at 30, because at 15 it seemed like a long way away. But it didn't go to plan, and I had to kind of adapt and adjust and expand from all of that. So it's been an amazing experience, and also an opportunity to formulate, I guess, the observations and the experiences that I had. And that's what a lot of today is going to be about. It's a lot of what the book Making Sense and Sensible about, as well as my box. It's very much around my accumulation of experiences and knowledge and observations, because I like to observe people and wonder why they do things, which turned out I was doing that back, when I was like 7 years of age. My dad would, I thought he was very clever, but it turned out he was sussing me out to see how I viewed things. So this is a great opportunity, I guess, for me to bring these ideas to you through a webinar. And especially given it's a nice chilly morning here in Gippsland, it's nice to sit home with our cups of tea and our doonas and in the warmth of our house and be able to sort of still experience and get some value out of that. So this is new to me, so if I make mistakes, please be kind and forgive me as I push buttons and work things out. All right, so hope that goes away. Yes, it is. Okay, not for long. Thank you. Right, there we go. So we're on self-empowerment with ease. And the topic at which I'm going to be looking at today is basically the 3 obstacles to emotional healing that keeps people lost, stuck and overwhelmed on their path of self-empowerment. And I like doing things on slides because I have a tendency to chat and tell stories, and I need to be well behaved. So putting things on a PowerPoint are always really, really good to be able to keep us on track and make sure. But please, as I go, ask questions, make sure it makes sense to you. I really, it's important to me that I get the point across and that it's clear. And sometimes when I say things, I have a whole story sitting inside my head, and I say, a few words, and then I realise I need to explain it all. So please feel free to ask me questions and clarify things as we go through. So let's begin. So we start at the third one. So the number 3 obstacle that keeps us lost, stuck and overwhelmed on our journey to self-empowerment is basically being emotionally overwhelmed. The biggest part around the whole idea of being emotionally overwhelmed, or what does it even mean to be emotionally overwhelmed, it's actually when all of our feelings in our body just build up. Do you mean? And there's so much sensation, there's so much energy running through our body, there is all of these thoughts, there's even thoughts we're not even aware of, there's thoughts that don't even make sense to us because we don't understand where they've come from. So we have this experience of sensations in our body, energy in our body, and that's that vibration, tingling. Sometimes it can be anxiety, it can feel pressure, we can get headaches. So we have all of these sensations that are emotional, that are physical, that are energetic, running through our body. And the thing is, we don't understand where they come from, and they're so at times overwhelming that we can't even be present to them. It's difficult to sit with it. It's difficult to stay present and often what we want to do is just numb it out. We want to shove it down and put it somewhere else. And obvious examples would be things like sadness, grief. Of course, there's grief of when somebody passes, that we can feel an enormous amount of sadness that can become overwhelming. But just general sadness about life experiences. I think a lot of times when we watch things on TV, what time, which is 6 o'clock news, is back being 6 o'clock again, isn't it? Skyhook sung a song, horror story, other horror movie at 6, and our news is quite sad. We find ourselves confronted by a world that is being made to appear more dangerous all the time, and that at times can be overwhelming. So we can feel overwhelmed by our anger, our sadness, our fears, our confusion. Sometimes in those things we can even feel overwhelmed by a sense of powerlessness because we don't know what we can do about that and how we can work through a lot of those things. So we feel it all through our body, and so being emotionally overwhelmed actually keeps us stuck a lot of the times. It can actually make us feel lost because we are confused and we're lost into the fear of, feels scary and we don't know what to do about it. We also can obviously then the overwhelm means that we want to eat more, drink more, go and party, go and do other things so that we can try and avoid the feeling of being overwhelmed. And a lot of this, the work that I do, the stuff that I love realistically, is that if we could observe, and I get what I've just said, is the difficulty is we get overwhelmed. The part of that we need to be able to go, okay, I feel overwhelmed, recognize that we feel overwhelmed, and then say, it ultimately, even overwhelmed is just an emotion. And I really run on a bit of a belief that if it's a feeling, we can fix it. Whatever it is that's going on, we have the opportunity that a feeling is a feeling, a thought is, our emotions are just that. They don't define us, they don't have to consume us. And if we can just observe them and be able to go, it's okay to feel, it doesn't mean I can't do anything about it. It enables us to then take that next step. So emotional overwhelm, is often caused by not being able to make sense of our experiences. And of course, if we can make sense of our experiences, then things start to change. So often we will say, but it doesn't make sense. And you think about what's going on in the world today. I mean, I know, I've said it, I know lots of my, when I'm talking with friends, we all do it doesn't make sense. Why would people do this kind of stuff? What's going on in the world? What motivates these people to do all this kind of stuff? A lot of the times we don't always think that things make sense to us because it's not like us, or we would never do those things. So we've got to start to go, well, what can't I make sense of? You know, what's happening in our lives, what's going on within how we even feel, what we're watching, the impact that the people in our lives, the world, events, what's happening that is actually triggering us to say, well, I can't make sense of that. And if I can't make sense of it, then that means something about me. And that kind of language is going to come to make more sense as we go through this process. Why is it happening? We often ask why. Why is this happening? You know, and children, small children, 2-year-olds, drive their parents crazy. But why? But why? But why? Within us, even if we're not, when we move on and we're much older than 2 years old, we still have that part of us in our mind that actually says, you know, but why, but why, but why, but why. And so the but why and the what does this all mean is actually part of the making sense. It's our drive to make sense of things. And whether it's what's going on now, well, even with what's going on now, if we look at our lives and say, okay, there's all this stuff going on in our worlds right now, and it pushes our buttons and we feel overwhelmed with the stress, the reality is it's pushing those buttons because we have something inside of us to get pushed. So even if, and actually I'll give you an example. This was one of mine, most definitely. So during the US elections, I was feeling quite distressed about Donald Trump's potential election into being the American president. And I felt the need to get off on my soapbox and try and say, hey, you know, look what's happening. This guy could be very dangerous in the future. And so the degree of, and then of course he got elected, so it wasn't kind of, you know, it was like, and I ran in my mind like so many did, like surely they can't elect him, surely people will see what he's going to be like. But I'd hear people constantly saying, no, that's just talking lots for, you know, it's just election propaganda, it's, you know, it's not what he will really do. So what I actually did once he got elected was went, okay, I've now got 4 years of Donald Trump. I can't put this much of my energy into being stressed and reactive and going, you know, I need to get on my soapbox and my 15-year-old needs to kind of name it all out loud. So I actually looked at what is it that Donald Trump actually represents? What does that relate to in my own personal life? What experiences of people like a Donald Trump do I have? And then I put it into the resolution and empowerment tapping script and I tapped it away. So that now when he does things, my first response, I'm doing it already, my first response is I just start laughing and think, oh, good grief, because I don't feel like it has anything directly related to me and I don't have to do anything about it. So it's basically immediately, I'm not overwhelmed by him. I don't get lost in my past experiences. I'm not feeling confused and concerned and worried. It doesn't mean I won't make comment. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to name it for what it is, but the degree of stress it creates has been lifted. And that's very much what I'm about. We need to be able to find a way to take the stress. In the language of emotional freedom technique, we talk about decharging a situation. So situations may still be there, but our response to them, the way in which it creates a feeling inside of our body will be different. So when he does and says all the things that he does on almost a daily basis, I'm no longer overwhelmed by that. I don't get lost in past experiences that trigger things for me anymore. So that's why I see it's really valuable for us to be able to recognize that we simply need to make sense and find the links between what's going on now that creates all of this overwhelming sensation in our bodies to our other past experiences and what's gone on. So I'm pretty sure everybody that I can see that's on the call that I'm aware of, that would all make sense to you as well. Yeah? Can we get nodding?
When I get overwhelmed, I tend to, I guess, distract myself, but then I kind of shut off as well sometimes, and I'm like, just get on with it. The only reason why I get overwhelmed is when I have too much to do.
Yeah.
And then I just can't do anything. How do I get past that?
Yeah. So, and I guess that's what I like. Well, I guess I have to be able to say that's why I love my resolution and empowerment tapping scripts, because if we can do it, but you're right. And that's the entire point, I guess, of this entire webinar, is to go through that process, to kind of explain it, name it, and then take you through. But yes, so from a scientific point of view, just to give that, you know, the bottom line is that when we get overwhelmed, the reality is we don't feel safe. And so when we don't feel safe, the amygdala shuts us down. So the prefrontal cortex gets locked down, and we then distract. I mean, how many people have had assignments to do in life, and instead of doing their assignment because it feels stressful, they go and clean the house or cook some food, or they have to make 5 different urgent phone calls, you know, all that stuff. Yeah. Yes. You know, that's what it does. That's part of it. Do you mean? And the thing that the thing that I've found with the tapping, the empowerment, the resolution empowerment tapping script, is that now that I'm like 2.5 years down the track of using it, it is amazing how the awareness of the overwhelm is, when it surfaces, the awareness is there, and it's literally like I can still, my frontal cortex can stay present and just go, wow, you're really overwhelmed right now. And so it's like your logical brain can kick in and talk to your emotional brain and say, it's okay, I'm here. Do you mean? And one of the cards in the deck of the box of inner secrets is big U, small u. And I know people have all different kind of words for it, but this opportunity for the all-knowing part of us to calm down, the experiencing part of us, the small us, is part of it. So it is, I think that's where things like tapping, once you start using it, it actually helps stop the amygdala from actually taking over and hijacking, you know, your brain, and then taking you off and distracting you. So yeah, and that's part of the process, and I'll talk more about that stuff as we go through. Does that help right now, Helen? Yeah Beautiful. Okay, yes, Jody.
Can I ask too on that, is that where that analysis paralysis thing comes from? You think and think and think and worry so much about something that you just get stuck in that paralyzed place of not being able to do anything.
Yes, absolutely. And later on, there's even a slide where I say we need to get out of being paralyzed. Yes, thank you, Jodie. Love it when people are like, yes, you're on there. It is. And it's, you know, I mean, the bottom line is, when we're starting out trying to make sense of our lives and stuff, you know, it is overwhelming. And I don't pretend for a split second that I'm light and fluffy, because that would be silly. Everyone who knows me, I'm not light and fluffy. And when I wrote Making Sense of the Insensible, I would probably say that at least, 95% of everybody that's read it has read it very slowly, has been quite, here I'm talking about emotional overwhelm. They've found it quite overwhelming at various times, because they can see themselves in it, and it pushes the buttons to go, wow, that's me, I get it. But the purpose of this book was to try and write, and so far I think I did reasonable, because I haven't found anything else that connects extra to writing yet, but I've tried to explain almost every single situation we may find ourselves in, so that we can, the ability to make sense of our lives is sitting in this book, right? And that's why it's called Making Sense of the Insensible, because it's looking at our life and what creates a lot of the overwhelm, and trying to give language to it and knowledge to it. And I will expand on those concepts shortly as well. All right. But the bottom line is, and this is where we're now going to lead directly beautifully into the next point, you can't let go of stuff you can't make sense of. If we can't make sense of it, we carry it around. It stays with us. So that point you just made then, Jodie, about it going over and over and over, that's exactly what happens. In terms of our memories and the unconscious, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows all that bit around the first, 6 to 7 years, everything goes in, we don't have filters, we store it all. And then we we basically, when our brain develops at 13 into the adult way of thinking, we replay everything that we learnt in our first 13 years or 12 and a half years. We do it all again for the next 12 and a half. At 25, the final part of the brain is developed. And so we really don't reach our full capacity to process our emotions, process our life, filter things through until we're actually like post 25. And I don't know about all of you, but I'd done a lot of stuff by 25. Made a lot of decisions, been involved in a lot of things that, you know, to think that my brain was still forming and developing and processing. So our first 6 to 7 years information gets repeated again through our teenage years, and then we can just continue to repeat it on loop post 25 over and over and over and over again. So that part in terms, and when, so has anyone ever heard of the 5 broadband filters? No. It's a bit of a fave of mine. I learnt it when doing my welfare course, so it was part of a counselling thing. The basic thing of the 5 broadband filters is that it's actually a humanistic psychology idea, and what it says is that when we're experiencing something right now, our brain will actually filter it. So the information comes into our brain, and what it does is it will say, what's my general life past experiences? Every single experience I've ever had, it gets filtered through that to see whether what we're experiencing right now actually relates to us at all overall. Then it says, what specific experiences have I had that are actually relevant to this right now? So as we go through this, if something comes up and says, and it pushes a button for you, that's going to be something I've said has pushed a memory in your hippocampus that says, hey, I've got a memory directly about that, and it pulls it out of that memory and gives it to our emotional brain to start processing. And all this happens like in no time at all. What needs we have going on at the time, which is what my whole box of inner secrets is about, and what a lot of this we're going to talk about. So what needs we have, or particularly what needs are not being met right now, that pushes our buttons and pulls all of our experiences of not having that need met. That box get open, and then all those memories come flooding back. The environment we're in. So if we're in an environment at a time when something happens, so that could be a trigger. And the obvious examples of that would be, say, someone who has post-traumatic stress from being in, say, the Vietnam War. I think there's enough documentation we know. So they can hear a helicopter. The helicopter is actually an environmental trigger that then activates memories that then come back up and flood the mind. And then the last one is basically our self-concept. So who do we think we are? Okay, our very core of our beliefs about ourselves. So those 5 broadband filters are what actually our emotional brain filters through those 5 things and pulls out every memory that relates to our current experience or our current triggers to then tell us what we're actually doing. So in some ways, Helen, to kind of why do you get overwhelmed? Because of that. So if you've got a variety of different triggers with a whole lot of experiences, wham, up they come, and then the emotional brain is overwhelmed by that. It goes into not feeling safe. It goes into the fear, and then once it's in that situation, the prefrontal cortex can't kick in and calm us back down. It sends, and because the emotional brain's kind of right here, right? So in the back of our head right here, it sends all the information straight back down our spine and back out into every nerve in our whole body. So our whole body feels this sensation of the fear and the overwhelming stuff. Our mind starts running. We get thoughts in our heads that we don't really understand where they come from, because like, what's that got to do with what I'm doing right now? And it goes. I have a great example of where that happened, where it doesn't appear to make sense, but it's a great one. I had a year where I decided to explore my creativity, because I kind of viewed I wasn't particularly creative in traditional creative ways. And one of the things I decided to do was go and do singing lessons, because trust me, singing is not one of my skills, right? So, and I wanted to challenge myself in all those ways. So on the very first day of my singing lesson, I was sitting there, and the singing teacher, who was lovely, says to me, you know, so sing a favourite song you've got. So I start singing, and as I sang, because I was in, I knew I couldn't sing, but most of the time I just mucked around and I sung by myself, and it was okay because no one really heard me. And maybe the only people who did loved me, so they had just, they'd be polite about it. So I sung, and it was the first time I was singing in front of somebody else, and it was like I heard myself singing, and it was not a good experience. And all of a sudden, I was just swamped with this incredible amount of humiliation. I wanted to cry. I felt like bleh in it all. But the memory, the picture that came flying back to me at that time was actually one of my uncles poking at me, which they thought that was funny. He would poke and poke and poke and poke at me when I was a little child, so until I would burst into tears and then humiliate me for crying. So that experience of being poked by my uncle has absolutely nothing to do with singing. I wasn't singing. It wasn't because I was singing. I wasn't even trying to show off or be a kid or do any of that stuff. It was just that. But the emotion of the humiliation was what connected the singing experience with my uncle when I was a child. Does that make sense to everybody? So I kind of talk about, like, in our mind we have like boxes of emotions, and if on the label of the box of emotion goes every experience of our lives in relation to that emotion. Yeah? And so that's why when we feel something, a whole stack of different experiences in our lives and events in our lives that don't seem related to what we're currently experiencing right now, because the events don't look like our current event, but the emotion we feel in relation to that current event is exactly the same emotion we felt in those other events. That all makes sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay. So that's why we carry it around with us. It's why we have our little backpack full, or our suitcases full of all of those things we haven't been able to make sense, because we haven't been able to do that emotional processing part, which again I will talk about. Before we get to that part, I need to talk about context. So it becomes really important to understand context. So in terms of trying to make sense of our lives, it's actually really important to put things in context. And I will say that a lot of the times I find with certain kinds of things, and it's probably easier if I use it as an example, but with, for example, when I deal with people where there's been abuse in the background, in their life, okay, a lot of the time, because we now deal with things like child sexual abuse, I mean, we could even do things like domestic violence, which we're right on the beginning as a society. We're right on the very beginning of a change of perception around domestic violence. So with something like child sexual abuse, we've been trying to change our perspectives for the last 20 or 30 years, kind of stuff. So now today we have a very different understanding about child sex abuse than what we did in the 1970s. The 1980s was when all of a sudden it started to kind of, like the 1970s, it started to be exposed. By the 1980s, there was a whole different, there was started to be this like, it's wrong, and it hurts people to go through this, and we need to stop it. Prior to the 1970s, it was someone else's problem. It was in families. There was a whole cultural, societal thing that just didn't really do anything about it. So in that situation, if I give that as an example of the context, if we sit here today and we have today's understanding about child abuse, and we try to understand how it happened back here in the 1960s or the 1970s or the 1950s, do you mean not even the 1980s, it's very difficult to put today's beliefs over the top of beliefs from 40 or 50 years ago. Yeah? Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. And so what we have to do to make sense of our experiences at the time they occurred, we have to put them in the context of that time. So the beliefs of the time, the kinds of interactions that were normal of that time, the thoughts that were going on, the intentions, the attitudes, those sorts of things, we have to put them in a time, place, we have to put them in the context. Now, when I say put it in a context, I'm not saying that we have to then accept it's okay, but I'm saying we have to put it in a context. We have to go, at that time, this is how it was. because some of our stress will be based around the fact that we knew it was wrong when it happened, but in the time, that's how they did it. And so we have to find a place to be able to just go, that's what the culture of our society was. That's what our society did. That's what our family does. Sometimes it's a generational thing that may be going. So people of our generation experience certain kinds of themes. So, for example, people who, teenagers who grew up in the 1980s, where it was very, the 1980s was very excessive. Australia as a country was booming. There was wealth, there was money, there was, all those things were going on. So that generational experience of that time influences the way in which they then deal with things later. But today we're not in the same. You go into a recession, living and having beliefs about a boom time don't necessarily apply very well to a recession time. So putting things in a context, understanding what was going on at the time, why it happened the way it happened then is quite an important part. So to make sense, we've got to put things in a context of that time. But it doesn't mean we accept that it was okay and we should just shut up and suffer. No suffering, okay? No, do you mean, because that doesn't help us move on at all. But we need to understand the context. All right. So we need to make sense of it how. So this is and I've definitely learnt this over time. This is definitely one of those observation things about my own life, my own healing journey, and what I see people go through. So there's actually 3 parts to healing. The very first one is the intellectual. So a lot of what I've just talked about context is what I define as being the intellectual understanding of the context. Okay, so what do I mean by intellectual? So in Making Sense Insensible, I talk about these three steps. We have to make sense. Intellectually, we need to understand the context of our lives. We need to make sense of the why, the how, the when, the where, the what of our experiences, because we need to put it in its place. And once we intellectually understand it, we can let it be when we understand that context. And I do a little note. I do not say that we necessarily let it go, but we understand it. Now, that usually does involve lots of talking. It's about collecting people's perspective, understanding it in terms of putting it into a context, going back and looking at what was the belief systems of the time, all right? And what actually often happens through talk therapies and things like that is we usually stop. We tend to live today in a technological, scientific kind of based world that says once we understand something, that's it. That's all we need. We get it. There's nothing more. That's all there is. Okay. And a lot of the way in which we've been raised kind of tends more and more towards that. And my guess is that probably most of us on this call are sometimes going like, what is it with this world where even kids today are just going for science only? They're going, that's why we're finding a world that goes for medications, a world that just goes for, tell me the answer. If I get it, then there's nothing else I need to go. So we're probably on this call together because we know that just leaving it at the intellectual understanding only doesn't really fix anything. We're not letting things go. We just understand it. We get it intellectually. So what I say is what we get is mental awareness masquerading as healing. So a lot of the times I hear people say to me things like, oh yes, and they'll give me the intellectual understanding. It happened because da-da-da-da-da-da, so I'm healed now, I'm fine. But their life is still filled with examples that they're not fine, that they're still bringing in lots of experiences that actually show that there's still a stack of emotional stuff going on. So one of the big things I want to kind of say is I'm not saying one's more important than the other. What I'm saying is the first thing we have to do is mentally understand it. We actually do need to put our experiences into a context. If we can't put them in a context, we can't heal the emotion. We've got to intellectually understand it. So that's just what I'd call the first step. Personally, and I reckon I'm okay to say that with all of us here, the first step, get an understanding of it, make sense of it, go, I get the intellectual of it, right? Then, probably should say this. So of course, if we just if we do stop there, and Jodie, this again comes back to your beautiful point that you made. So if we do just intellectually understand it, that's when we stop there. We don't go on to do anything more. That's when we get stuck. That's when we get lost. That's when we will continue to be overwhelmed by our life, okay? And that, as I said just before, that is when life will keep bringing you in similar experiences in all sorts of ways because you haven't yet done the next step, okay? So hopefully you're going in. The next step is emotional. So we need to be able to then emotionally process the impact of all that context. Because the reality is that context had an impact on us. The reality of, and depending on our ages and stuff, but in the years when I was raised, I was like, feminism happened kind of in the 1970s. So I was just, where was I in the 90s? So I was probably coming into, or near the end of the 1970s, was coming into high school. So the early part of the 1970s, I'm like a small child in that sense, like I'm in primary school age. So that whole empowerment thing, when I look at the generation of women that I know, and I was lucky enough to have a dad that was feminist before feminism was very trendy, I know most of my girlfriends around me were raised by very patriarchal families. Dad was the boss. Mum was often home caring for children full time, and dad ruled, and girls weren't necessarily, in my generation, girls were not the preferred gender to be born. Boys were preferred. There was rules. I know one I was raised under, which was basically, I was responsible to make my brother behave because women were responsible for boys. And I'm not yet convinced our society's got out of that one yet. Again, we've got, that whole world of domestic violence stuff. One of the things that happens with that is women who are in that situation internalize a belief system that it's their fault that they get hit. And I know my one small aspect of my world that had to be healed was believing that somehow if my brother played up, I was to blame for that, because girls were held responsible for boys' actions. And I'm sure all of you were probably going, oh yeah, I can think of things where that's kind of played out. So the reality in terms of that process is it had an impact on us. The emotions that it created by going through that context actually hurt us, wounded us, left us with belief systems and thoughts and therefore patterns in our lives that we emotionally need to process. Does that make sense on how the step one moves in, like stage one, or the first one moves into the second one? Yeah? Little nods? Yeah? Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, lessons really only get to be learnt once we start emotionally processing them. All right. So the second step is that emotional processing of our past experiences. And the bottom line is I am not going to bullshit you. The reality is it takes effort and takes time. Okay. And we don't quickly just, those aspects don't just evaporate quickly. We don't yet live in a society that's very good at teaching us how to process or even manage those emotions. And on some level, we do live in a world that has some level of deception and self-deceiving, because our society feeds us lots of kind of lies and to keep the context alive and justified. And again, I'm pretty sure we're all on this call because we know that doesn't really work and we don't want to stay in it. So what actually happens when we don't quite know how to effectively manage our lives and effectively process that is that our emotional expression runs on a continuum. That continuum can be anywhere from crying to not crying to thinking, intellectualizing. If you look at another one of my little favorite topics, of course, is that whole archetype masculine feminine stuff, and where it's time, it's actually really time for a revolution for men. Women had the feminist movement. It's time for a masculine movement or something. Do you mean? We need men to become whole men. Men are still being raised to, not as much, but it's still there, are still being raised to not cry, to shut down their emotions, to think rather than feel, to rationalize things and intellectualize things, and not really be connecting to the emotion. And it's wonderful to see more and more men who are more emotional and get the value of that, but we still haven't flipped it enough, I don't reckon. There's still that aspect of things, and we're seeing it more and more. I think it's great when we see lots of examples in the news where men are being more held accountable for a lot of the masculine behaviours that our society used to just accept as boys being boys, men do that sort of stuff, women just have to put up with it. It's changing, but we still need to do more with all of that. So it becomes our emotional expression, and we are living in a society today where we see the what I would say the extreme ends of emotional expression, where it is out of control, and a lot of families are, to me, why are there so many people ice addicted? Why are there so many people who are the age that they are that are ice addicted? There's stuff missing in our society that means that we really need to learn how to emotionally process our world. And I think the more of us that can do that in our own personal worlds, the more of us that can work with people in our field, or even just within our friendships and the communications, to help people understand this kind of stuff and go, we've got to start learning this. We've got to start to learn emotional balance, rather than being out of balance. It'll just keep moving. It'll just keep doing it. So, and of course, the reality is what we want. We're looking for answers, and we want processes that unlock those repeating patterns, but not only unlock those patterns, but empower us to resolve our lessons. And that's a really important part. So the physical release is actually the final part, the third part of that process. And what I've actually found with the physical release, it's what I would call the cellular memory. So it happens in a natural timing. It's not something we can necessarily artificially push. We can't just decide we want it all done, yesterday. We have to, it's an evolving process that releases and releases. But we can use natural, like holistic therapies like tapping, and other things, fluorescence and things that help us release that cellular memory. But again, it seems to come as a natural timing process that actually happens along the way. All right. So a little activity for you to start to think of, because I'm going to do a little tapping in a moment with you, and I'd like to be able to insert your personal bits into all of this. So in terms of, I have a 3C steps. It's consciousness is the first step. And so given that you're here today, I'm imagining that you've come maybe looking for something. What would be the biggest thing you would say? What do you realise about maybe how someone's treated you? Thinking about the context things we've just talked about. What do you realise about something about the way you've been treated? What do you realise about something you've internalised from your experiences so that you actually treat yourself in a certain kind of way? What right now, pick one thing you'd say, yep, right now this is what's popped into my head. And jot it down. So what about the context? So think about, so there's you in the middle. What about the context? So there's cultural, there's gender, there's societal, there's family, there's socioeconomic, religion, and then your generational, your peer group. All right. What things have influenced you about that issue that you've just picked there? Does that make sense? Do anyone want to ask me a question?
Nearly all of them.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, jot them down, but we can only pick one thing. Well, we can't pick. Well, I hate saying that word now that I know that don't pick one thing. But we'll look. We can pick all things. We'll deal with it all. But we'll narrow it down.
One thing at a time.
One thing at a time. That's it. Thank you, Erin. Yeah. So it is, and that's a great point, Jody. And that's a really good thing to realise, the level of the influences on us around those things that we actually have. That you're okay with that, Helen? Yeah? Okay, cool. All right. So then write down, so the beliefs of the conditioning. So was it your peer, the family, the culture, society, gender, have influenced my, that have influenced my experiences are. So what's the belief that goes there in terms of what you'd rant? So you've got someone treats me this way. So let's just go that, like what I just explained before, probably in terms. So I get treated in a way that I'm responsible for men's behaviours. Let's go for the one I gave example before. Okay, so the belief I have is that it's basically, so the beliefs of the family, the societal, the cultural, because they have influenced my experiences, so that when I'm in relationships, I feel responsible for the behaviours of the men I'm in a relationship with. That would be an example. The expectations of those cultural, family, societal conditioning have influenced, so that I expect I'm responsible. So my, dare I go there, but my sense of responsibility, which is quite large, I have this sense of being responsible for what happens or what other people do. Does that make sense? Does that help you feel that kind of stuff in? So if I was going to be looking at that as the issue, which thank goodness I feel no emotion about that, I feel like I want to laugh, which don't take me wrong with that. It's because like I've done that work on that, but that would be an example that I could use, that's because you probably don't want me, going, oh. So I could then put that in and say, right, that is actually something that I'm aware of, that I was raised with, that interferes with my capacity to then have relationships or to interact with other people with that sense of responsibility. Does that help everybody think of what they can put in there? Yeah, no? Not really? Okay. Do you want to, is there something else that...
the conditioning is the blue circles.
Yes, we'll go back. So that's your conditioning. So what you want to look at is what beliefs were formed. So if we go back, do you want me to? So how someone treats you or how you've internalized and treat yourself. Whichever one of those two that you go, yes, I can probably think of both, but which one am I going to do? What is it? Where has it come from? Where did you learn to treat yourself that way? Or where did you learn to accept how you were treated?
Can you go back to the blue again? Because I'm just writing all them down because I'm still trying.
This one? This one?
No, the blue dots, the blue circles.
Blue dots, the blue circles, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the conditioning. Yep.
That's your conditioning, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of conditioning, they're the influences. Conditioning is just influences. The conditioning is the context in which we were raised in. And conditioning is filled with beliefs. We believe things. So, for example, before when I said about gender, when in the generations that I was raised in, like having been born in the 1960s, boys were still the preferred gender to be born. Every family wanted a boy. Okay. Today, people just want healthy babies. They don't care about the gender. Right? So that's a different kind of context. Culturally, boys were boys. Girls had to be, girls weren't allowed to be angry. Girls had to be polite. Girls had to be nice. What's that saying about, sugar and spice, all things nice? That's the girl. Nice. Da, da, da. And boys, don't they eat slugs and worms or something, and they end up to be whatever they are? So, there's those sayings. Think about the sayings of the time that you were raised, and look at the way in which that actually then creates the context in which you then have a belief about how you get treated, what you experience, how you've internalized that, and then treat yourself. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Are you finding something that relates to yourself? Yes? Helen? Megan?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Because remember what I said at the start, like I'm a bit deep and meaningful at times, and I have lots of information in my head, and sometimes I need to say more words out loud to make sure that everybody gets it. So we're just looking for, and the simplest thing right now, what I say is, what's the biggest belief about how you've been treated that you've formed? well, who cares what the expectations and beliefs are? We'll just let's go for a belief. Does everyone have a belief you think you've formed from that? From those experiences? Yeah? All right. So, tapping. Who wants to we'll do a quick, I've actually got to look at my time. How am I going? Okay. Okay. So, we tap with the pointer finger and the middle finger. This first round we're going to do, and then we're going to insert your belief into the next one. Okay. So, let's top of the head, and we're all going to say so. You can say it after me if you like. Even though it's normal.
Even though it's normal.
To want to express my inner truth.
To want to express my inner truth.
Okay, to the eyebrow point, my mind can't just let it be normal.
My mind can't just let it be.
Okay. Side of the eye, it has to create it into an unmet need.
It has to create it into an unmet need.
Underneath the eye, this triggers off my fear responses.
This triggers off my fear responses.
That I'm limited.
That I'm limited.
By the conditioning and expectations.
By the conditioning and expectations.
I've experienced in my life.
I've experienced in my life.
Right. Top of the lip. This then sets off a cascade.
This then sets off a cascade.
Of emotionally painful experiences.
Of emotionally painful experiences.
In my mind's reality.
In my mind's reality.
Chin point. But it's not how my life really has to be.
But it's not how
my life really has to be.
Collarbone point. It's just my fears running stories from my past.
It's just my fears running stories from my past.
Okay. On the right-hand side underneath the breast, we tap on the right-hand side and say, I don't really need certain conditions to exist.
I don't really
need certain conditions to exist.
Okay. To express my inner truth.
For me to express my
inner truth.
And underneath the arm, on either side, it doesn't matter which one you want to do. And I don't need specific circumstances.
And I don't need specific circumstances.
To exist for me to express my inner truth.
To exist for me to express my inner truth.
I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
Okay, take a nice deep breath.
Inner truth.
Let that go. All right. So now you're going to insert a little bit of your own stuff here. All right. So basically, so at top of the head. All right. And we're going to go, so by interpreting. Okay. So that's your family, society, gender, whatever. My something conditioning. Say whatever it is for you. My
family's
conditioning. As being about me.
As being about me.
I've created a belief.
I've created the belief.
Now say what your belief is that you just had. My belief that.
Boys are more important than girls.
Right. Then to here, to the eyebrow point, we say that belief that.
That belief that. Boys
and then say.
Girls.
Yep. Then colours my experiences.
And colours my experiences.
So it feels like it's true.
That feels like it's true.
And then side of the eye, but it doesn't have to stay true.
But it doesn't
have to stay true.
Okay, then to here. Now we're going to go back and we do it again. By interpreting my conditioning.
By interpreting
my conditioning.
As being about me.
As being conditioning, being about me.
I've created a belief that, and now say you believe.
I've created a belief that boys are more important than girls.
Okay. Top of the lip. That belief that, and say you believe.
I believe that
boys are more important than girls.
Then colours my experiences.
Colours my experiences.
So it feels like it's true.
It feels like it's true.
And then chin point, but it doesn't have to stay true.
But it doesn't have to stay true.
And then we're going to do it one more time. So collarbone point. By interpreting my conditioning.
By interpreting my family conditioning.
As being about me.
As being about me.
I've created a belief, and then say you believe.
I've created a belief.
Okay, right hand side underneath on the breast. That belief that, and say you believe.
That belief.
Belief that boys are more important and girls.
Then colours my experiences.
And colours my experiences.
So it feels like it's true.
It feels like it's true.
And then underneath the arm, but it doesn't have to stay true.
But it doesn't have to stay true.
Take a nice deep breath. Okay, and then top of the head, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Eyebrow point, I'm letting it all go.
Letting it all go.
Side of the eye, I'm letting it all go.
Letting it all go.
Underneath the eye, I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
Okay. Top of the lip, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Chin point, I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
And collarbone point, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Underneath on the right-hand side, I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
And then underneath the arm, I'm letting it all go.
Letting it all go.
Okay, take a nice deep breath. And let it all go. How's that feeling so far? Feel a bit of a shift? Yeah? Okay, top of the head. The only truth is.
The only truth is.
The only truth is.
I already am open.
I already am open
to expressing my inner truth.
Expressing my inner truth.
Okay, to the eyebrow point, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open.
I'm already open to expressing my inner truth.
Side of the eye, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
Underneath the eye, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I am already open to expressing my inner truth.
Top of the lip, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I'm already open to expressing my inner truth.
Chin point, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open to
expressing my inner truth.
Collarbone point, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
And underneath on the right-hand side, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
And then underneath the arm, I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
I already am open to expressing my inner truth.
And take a nice deep breath. How did that feel? Yeah? Did anyone notice anything? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was quick, but do you mean it was just a little dab of just trying to take that first little bit off. So that's there. All right. So, I knew he would bark at some point. Okay, so the number 2 obstacle that keeps us stuck, lost, and overwhelmed on our path to self-empowerment is the quick fix mindset. All right. Yes, I don't know how. There was a pause in my brain then just going, I'm not sure. Anyway, we tend to live in a world today that seems to have this idea, and it's got quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. You know, if you go back to the 1970s and the 1980s when this beginning phase of self-development sort of started, there was 10-step, 12-step plans, 8-step plans, do you mean? And we've got faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. We've got down to, you know, that everything has to be 3 steps, or in one quick way I can do this. So we've started to kind of have this pressure, I believe, a pressure that is now coming from, if you like, our generation, our time that's now, saying not only should we be able to, but we need to be able to, and of course we can fix everything immediately. And the difficulty is that when that doesn't actually work, what happens is we end up internalizing that if they can do it that quickly, then there must be something wrong with me. So we end up spiraling into this like pit of despair of like, well, and we start beating ourselves up because we somehow feel like we've failed. The judgment, the blame, the shame that we experience swallows us all up. And so while going to that webinar, going to that workshop, going to do that kind of work, actually we feel good at the time when we're there, but when we go away, we end up feeling often worse because everything doesn't shift permanently. Okay, even what we just did then. I mean, bottom line is we just tapped one belief of that aspect. There's no way known, in all honesty, am I going to expect that you're miraculously going to be over, bless you, whoever that was, over it completely, because that's not how it works. It just isn't how it works. We have to peel the layers off. So we need to get out of this quick fix mindset. And the reality is, if some of you on the call I know anyway, so I know that the people who are here, you've done work. You've been working on stuff for a long time. You've peeled layers. You know that the quick fix doesn't work. And yet we often still hope someone's got a quicker fix that will finally work, that this is the one that will work for us. I do it too, trust me. I'm not saying that because there's times you think, oh, would that work? I wonder if that's the answer. Will this make the complete collapsing? Because somehow we've heard significant people we value, people who are authors and lecturers and all that kind of stuff, workshop holders, tell us that it can be quick and it can be easy, or it is, and that's how it should be. And a lot of marketing techniques are very much pitched on promise immediate quick answers because, do you mean? And I get that the marketing is there for a reason. I mean, they don't call it marketing for no reason. But the reality is, what I find is that people end up coming to me when they've tried all the quick fixes and they realize it doesn't, and now they want to get to the reality. They want to deal with the box that belongs to them and not the box that belongs to everybody else. So we're trying to do all this healing, but the bottom line at the same time, we've got lives to live. We've got jobs to run. We've got families. We've got children. We've got mums and dads and brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and friends and a community and a life. And so life is very full and life is very busy. So we often actually want the quick fix, the sugar-coated candy version. If we're going to spend time navel-gazing, we want it to be real, we want it to be quick, we want it short, we want bite-sized approaches to healing because we don't have a lot of time. And there's this kind of irony about now somewhere that fills my brain, because while I know that it's not a quick, I know that for the majority of us, the healing journey is a process, and we need to step out of all of that. And here it is, here Jody is the words. It's time for us to step out of the paralyzing mindset. Yes. Do you mean? We need to let go of the need for it to be quickly fixed, and at the same time, and that's where we need to let go of all of everybody else's rules, everyone else's limitations, all the restrictions, all of the stuff. We need to stop trying to fix ourselves all the time. And I know personally, when I stepped out of there must be something wrong with me, I need to fix me mentality, and moved into the, you know what, I'm on a path of self-discovery. I'm on a journey of self-empowerment, and I don't actually want that journey to ever stop. I'm happy to continue to peel my layers, to grow, to expand, to learn. In the actual fact, what I've really been finding the last couple of years is I have just to expand myself to run this webinar. I can promise you, I was a little bit, nervous about my first webinar. I was going like, and there was a part of me this morning when I woke up was like, can I pull the pin? Can I not do it? Maybe I don't do it. Maybe I don't do a webinar, because what if it doesn't work? What if I can't see people and relate to people and they don't get it because, I don't know, what if? I don't know. I could pull the pin. Oh, that would be irresponsible. And then, I took the dog for a walk, and I'm walking in the freezing cold, and I'm breathing and saying to myself, you just know that when you are in your space of your purpose in life, there's a degree of anxiety of stepping through that space into, you just have to experience doing it, and then you'll be fine. Because everyone will go, oh, you'll be fine, Leonie, you'll be fine, Leonie. And they do it. And I think, yes, but that doesn't mean I don't feel nervous about it, first of all. So the journey that I've found for me is that I don't have to fix that. It's not broken. It's my journey. And sometimes expanding my full expression, expanding myself and the way in which I work in the world. And this is one of them. This is my first webinar. And I've probably should have maybe done it a long time ago, but I don't need to punish myself because there's nothing wrong with me. I can just go, well, I didn't know how to do it. I've learnt how to do it. I accessed somebody and said, teach me how to do a webinar. I need to do it. This is my next step. This is my expansion. It's part of a journey. So we can let go of the fixing stuff. And if we let go of the fixing stuff, we actually get to realize that we're just on a journey of self-discovery. And that self-discovery comes every single day with every interaction, no matter where it was. One of the authors that I really liked reading many, many moons ago was Dan Millman. And what I liked about Dan Millman was that he basically said, raising your family, going to work, eating, cooking your food, you know, living your daily life is in actual fact your spiritual journey. And I think I agree. For me, that is the path of discovering who I am, and my full potential is an ever-evolving, ever-growing reality. So the bottom line is, I can sit here right now and say to you, I don't actually know what my full potential is. I know the potential I had an hour ago and 7 minutes ago, but the potential that I have now at 7 minutes past 10 may well in fact be quite different than the potential I had at 9 o'clock or 1 minute to 9 this morning. And when I get off this call, if it works and you all kind of like go, yeah, okay, that was an interesting experience, may then be very different to the potential that I can then evolve myself into next. So shifting from this idea that somehow we are human doings, because we're not little piles of stuff. We are human beings, and it's a journey. We don't have to fix it all today. We can use everyday life. All of our experiences are our opportunities to work through our stuff. And I think that one of the things that does keep us in the stuck stage is this quick fix, because I believe it disconnects us from our inner truth, which I'm hoping, because we just did a little bit of baby tapping about I already am open to being, you know, expressing my inner truth, that will be a lot easier for you to just go, you know what, I really don't have to do some quick fix. I can just embrace this idea of a journey and going on through that. The other thing that I really do feel is that we are all living proof that someone else's theories aren't working in our life. If we've tried and put on everybody else's, you know, clothes, everyone else's theories, everyone else's belief systems, and we've tried to make our life fit into that belief system, and yet the lessons keep coming, there it is. It's because that theory doesn't work for us. And if a theory does work, fantastic, use it. To be totally honest, and I don't know whether this is a good thing for me to say or a bad thing, but it's an honest thing. If my theory doesn't work, don't do it. Do you mean if you just go, yeah, she's full of, what she's saying doesn't gel for me, then I'm not the right person for you. And that's okay. That's fine. There are theories out there that work, and when we find them, we use them. And that's the most important thing. And the fact that that theory didn't work for us doesn't mean something's wrong with us. It just means that theory didn't work for us. It didn't heal. It didn't fix it. It didn't take away our pain. It didn't heal the wound. We need to find another theory, another understanding, another explanation. So, I can talk just as much on a webinar as I can in person, it turns out. All right. So, because we've got 20 minutes and I've still got one whole bit. But anyway, let's see how we go. So we're ready to tap again? Okay, top of the head. Even though it's normal.
Even though it's normal.
To embrace the healing process with ease.
To want to embrace
the healing process with ease.
Eyebrow palm. My mind can't just let it be normal.
My
mind just can't let it be normal.
Side of the eye. It has to create it into an unmet need.
It has to create it into
an unmet need.
Underneath the eye. This triggers off my fear responses.
This triggers off my fear responses.
That I'll get lost, stuck and overwhelmed.
But I get lost,
I
stuck.
get lost, stuck, and overwhelmed
with the process of self-empowerment.
with the process of self-empowerment.
This is a bit, Helen, I said I will, we'll try and release some of that stress. Top of the lip. This then sets off a cascade
This then sets off
a cascade
of emotionally painful experiences
of emotionally painful experiences
in my mind's reality.
in my
My
mind.
mind's reality.
Chin point. But it's not how my life really has to be.
But it's not how my life really has to be.
Collarbone point. It's just my fears running stories from my past.
It's just my
fears
running
running stories
stories.
from my past.
Underneath on the right hand side, I don't really need certain conditions to exist.
Need certain conditions to exist.
For me to feel at ease with the process of self-empowerment.
For me to feel at ease with the process of self-empowerment.
And underneath the arm, and I don't need specific circumstances
And I don't need specific circumstances
to exist for me to be at ease
to exist for me to be at ease
with the process of self-empowerment.
with the process of self-empowerment.
I already am embracing
I already am embracing
the healing with ease.
and healing with ease.
Okay, taking a nice deep breath. Top of the head. By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a reality
Created a reality
where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts.
I get lost trying to heal my old hurts.
Okay, eyebrow point. This reality where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts
This reality where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts
then colours my experiences
and colours my experiences.
so it feels like it's true.
So it feels like it's true,
Side of the eye, but it doesn't have to stay true.
but it doesn't have to stay true.
Underneath the eye, by interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a reality
created a reality
where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts.
where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts.
Top of the lip. This reality where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts
This reality where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts
then colours my experiences
then colours my experiences.
so it feels like it's true.
That feels like it's true,
But it doesn't have to stay true.
but it doesn't have to stay true.
Okay. Collarbone point. By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
being about me,
I've created a reality
I've created a reality
where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts.
where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts.
And underneath the right-hand side, this reality where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts
This reality where I get lost trying to heal my old hurts
then colours my experiences
and colours my experience.
so it feels like it's true.
It feels like it's true,
But it doesn't have to stay true.
but it doesn't have to stay true.
Take a nice deep breath and let it go. All right, top of the head. By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a reality
created a reality
where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life.
where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life.
Eyebrow point. This reality where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life
This reality where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life
then colours my experiences
and colours my experience.
so it feels like it's true.
Well, it feels like it's true,
Side of the eye, but it doesn't have to stay true.
but it doesn't have to stay true.
Underneath the eye, by interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a reality
I've created a reality
where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life.
where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life.
Top of the lip. This reality where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life
This reality where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life
then colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
and colours my experiences so it feels like it's true,
And chin point, but it doesn't have to stay true.
but it doesn't have to stay true.
Collarbone point. By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a reality
created a reality
where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life.
where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life.
And underneath on the right-hand side, this reality where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life,
This reality where I get overwhelmed by the pain of my life,
then colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
then colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
And underneath the arm, but it doesn't have to stay true.
But it doesn't have to stay true.
Take a nice deep breath and blow that out. Top of the head. By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a belief
I've created a belief
that there must be something wrong with me that I can't fix myself.
that there must be something is wrong with me if I can't fix myself.
Well, there might be a typo in there, but thank you for saying that exactly how it is, Jodie. That belief that there must be something, ignore the is, something wrong with me,
But that belief that there must be something wrong with me
if I can't fix myself,
if I can't fix myself.
then colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
Colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
Okay, side of the eye, but it's not true.
But it's not true.
Underneath the eye, by interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
as being about me,
I've created a belief
I've created a belief
that there must be something wrong with me
that there must be something wrong with me
if I can't fix myself.
I cannot fix myself.
Top of lip. That belief that there must be something wrong with me
I believe that there must be something wrong with me
if I can't fix myself,
if I can't fix
myself.
then colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
and colours my
Because my experience, so it feels like it's true.
And chin point, but it's not true.
but it's
But
not.
it's not true.
Collarbone point. By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
By interpreting the process of self-empowerment
as being about me,
Being
as
about
being
me,
about me,
I've created a belief
I've created a belief
that there must be something wrong with me
that there
there
must be something wrong with me
me
if I can't fix myself.
if I can't fix myself.
And underneath on the right-hand side, that belief that there must be something wrong with me
I believe that there must be
There must be
something
something wrong with me
if I can't fix myself,
if I can't fix myself.
then colours my experiences so it feels like it's true.
And colours my
and
experience.
colours my experiences so it feels like it's
And
true.
then underneath the arm, but it's not true.
But it's not true.
Take a nice deep breath and let that all go. And then we're literally going to tap that we're letting it go. Top of the head, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Eyebrow point, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Side of the eye, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Underneath the eye, I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
Top of the lip, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Chin point, I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
I'm letting go of all that
No
no longer.
longer serves me.
Collarbone point, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting it all go.
Underneath the right-hand side, I'm letting go of all that no longer serves me.
Letting
I'm
go of
letting go of all that no longer serves me.
And underneath the arm, I'm letting it all go.
I'm letting
I'm
it all
letting it all go.
Take a nice deep breath and just blow out all that garbage you just don't need to hold on to anymore. Okay, let's do the yummy yum good bit. The only truth is,
The only
The
truth
truth is,
I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am.
I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I
I
already am.
already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
Side of the eye, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
Underneath the eye, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I
I
already
am
am.
embracing self-discovery with ease.
Top of the lip, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am
I am
embracing.
embracing self-discovery with ease.
Chin point, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
Collarbone point, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am embracing.
Embracing self-discovery with ease.
Underneath on the right-hand side, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am
I am
embracing.
embracing self-discovery with ease.
And underneath the arm, I already am embracing self-discovery with ease.
I already am discovering self. with ease.
Take a nice deep breath. I like the fact the sun's starting to shine through my window. Look at that, I'm getting a bit of a glow in the corner over here.
You are.
I am. Okay, how does that feel?
It's good.
Yeah, feel it, shake it off. Let's shake it off. So now the reality of the resolution empowerment tapping script is that you'll feel the shift now. As the day goes on, you'll continue to feel that shift. So Helen, I'd love to hear how you go over time, especially with that overwhelmed stuff, because tapping those key things should really start to shift the way your brain does what it does. And for all of us, but it will really shift that. The beautiful, weird, kind of interesting part of this is when you go to sleep tonight, your brain will literally rewire. Tomorrow morning you will wake up and you will just think differently than what you have previously. So you feel this shift now, you feel that energy shifting, you'll feel it go on throughout the day, but tomorrow after sleep is when all the magic goes on and your brain rewires. It's literally that process is now what the language in the tapping script unlocks our brains so that we can then make that shift, which brings us into the number one obstacle that keeps us lost, discontent. Actually, there you go, there's another typo. Stuck and overwhelmed is the need-fear cycle. And hopefully already by now we'll start moving through a lot of that kind of stuff, because the need-fear cycle, which is basically, I wrote about it in Making Sense and Sensible, and the box of inner secrets is filled with that. That's the card deck is all covering this thing. But what I want to do just briefly is talk to you about that need-fear cycle. So this here, we're in a situation where there's some kind of an unmet need. What that does is it triggers off a fear response. So we fear what it says about us if that need's not met. That then gives us a feeling response, okay? That's all that stuff we started about the emotional overwhelm at the start. So we feel anxiety, we feel uncomfortable, we feel confused, lost, stuck. We want to avoid things. We feel stuck. Then we go to the mind part. So our mind then starts wanting to find a solution. And so that solution could be, may not be after today, but could be, I'm going to go make a cup of tea, I'm going to do the ironing, I'll wash the clothes, it will want to go and do something to distract. But at the same time, it will also want to find a solution to the unmet need. And so within that, it will also go off and come up with some ideas about what we need to do next. So then we find the solution. I go, let's do this. This will make me feel better. And sometimes doing the washing could make us feel better because we're actually avoiding the whole thing. And we go off to do some action to basically get that need met, all right? And we go and we spend a little while, days, weeks, hours, months, depends on what it is, going to seek a way to get that need met. And if it doesn't get met the way that we're looking, then we come back and then we start again with, oh boy, that need's not met. What does that say about me? So the great example and that, you know, I love to use because it's so easy and we can relate to it is we all want to be loved. And if we don't feel loved, right, we fear what that says about us. We fear that makes us unlovable. That does not make us feel good at all. Our mind goes looking for ways to feel loved. And in all honesty, people go to chocolate for that. We all know that chocolate's a comfort food. People go and drink alcohol because it comforts them. You know, they'll go and find ways to numb the pain, but they'll still be seeking to who, what, where, how. Some people go and buy a dog or a cat to get that need to be loved. You know, they'll go off and they'll try and change their relationships. They'll try and act in ways, do things, whatever, to try and find a way to get that need met from whomever it is that they're wanting to be loved. So they'll go off and they'll take a series of actions over a period of time trying to get that need met. And if it doesn't change the relationship, or it doesn't, then you buy the dog or the cat or the turtle and you still don't feel loved, then you come back to go, I still don't feel loved. And then the same fear comes back. What does that say about me? So it's a need-fear cycle, because if we get trapped in that, we keep going round and round and round and round, and it just becomes what we live. There's actually, part of what I was going to offer today out of this, from the webinar, which literally yesterday I had to do a bit of a change because I'm not 100% sure what the next few months of my life is going to look like, because, and this is a great example of how life dishes you things, my well, I'm probably technically not allowed to say it yet because it's not out there, so I'll tell you, but you're not allowed to tell it. So my mum has just had some not good news about her health. So originally what I was going to actually offer, but I want to just cover some of this, was looking at an 8-week program where I'd go through these core needs and work with people to actually find their own issues and then heal them. But I dare say with what I'm about to deal with in the next few months, I'm not going to be able to have that time. So I will end up offering some more personal stuff at the end for anyone who would like to do some more one-on-one stuff. But I look at, so I've identified 20 core needs, but the reality is what I see is the need to be loved and the fear of being abandoned, the need to belong, the fear of being alone, the need to be approved of, the fear of not being good enough, the need to be accepted, the fear of rejection, the need to be worthy, the fear that we don't deserve stuff, the need to be safe, the fear that we'll be violated, the need to be respected, the fear that we'll be overlooked, the need to trust, and the fear of being betrayal. They are really big ones. To me, every single one of us would be sitting there, and I would actually say that most of us would probably say, yep, that is a lot of what we put a lot of our focus in. And we know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to live in a sense of abandonment. We know what it feels like to be alone when there isn't anyone. We know what it feels like to not be good enough. We know the pain of being rejected. We know that everything that we do, there's this unconscious message somewhere, but do I deserve it? Do I deserve to have that nice whatever, car, purse? Do I deserve to be loved? Do I deserve all those things? That fear that some part of us will get violated. The need to be safe influences every single thing about people's lives. Every part of our work, every part of our relationships is, am I safe to express all of who I am? Am I safe to be me? Am I safe to share this bit of information about something with somebody? So safety influences us massively. The whole amygdala runs on, am I safe? You know, our brain is wired. We have a reticular activating system and an amygdala that their entire purpose in our brain, and every single experience gets filtered through those things before anything else happens, is, am I safe? So that core need to be safe is a massive one. And we do need to be respected, and we don't want to be overlooked. We don't want to be invisible. Being invisible sucks. You know, Emoto did a rice experiment, and he proved that having energy withheld from us, to be ignored, is one of the most painful experiences that we can have. And the rice that was completely ignored actually died and went moldy, whereas the rice that was loved and told it was wonderful, you know, grew beautifully. The rice that was told it was hated and was horrible, worthless piece of garbage, grew a little and then died. To be completely ignored, to be invisible, to not exist. You know, those are the things that are really core parts of us. And nobody likes to be betrayed at all. We absolutely do not want to be betrayed on any level. So our trust radars are big. And, you know, I say something different. I say if someone breaks your trust, don't blindly just trust them again. They have to earn your trust back. And it's okay to say, this is what you need to do to earn my trust back, because that's real. That's how we are. Because the first time someone actually betrays you, sure, maybe something was going on in their life, they couldn't help it, I don't know, make up any justifications for it you like, that's perfectly fine. You can forgive them, no problems at all. I'm very big at forgiving people. I'm open to that too. But if they betray you again, you've just discovered what personality they have. If you then forgive them blindly because you think you have to, because that's the cool thing to do in this modern day, and they betray you again, any hurt you have, realistically, you already knew that. So to me, yeah, people have to earn our trust. And if they break our trust, we have the right to say, I'm not going to blindly trust you again. That's been broken. You now have to act in certain ways. So these core needs are really important for us to understand how they influence our lives. And they are one of the, you know, reasons I believe that we get stuck. So what does it feel like? Oh, yes. So we've just described. We all know what it feels like in terms of that. What does it feel like? Just imagine for a moment. Just hold that space and imagine feeling completely loved. Hold a space and imagine what it feels like to be completely belong and know you have your place of connection. Imagine being completely safe, that anything and everything you ever did was completely safe to be able to be that. Imagine being accepted just the way you are, with all your quirkiness, with all your individuality, with all the baggage you come, and with all the not baggage, with the whole being of yourself. Imagine what it feels like. Imagine being completely worthy, that absolutely nothing you could do would make you unworthy. That you deserve to have everything you want to have in your life, everything you could imagine. And even if you can't imagine it today, you're allowed to work towards that and get it at some point, and then you're even allowed to have it then, because you're still worthy, you're still lovable, you are still completely connected, belong. My dog, seriously. How does that feel? What would change in your world if you could be in that space? I did a tapping one day in which I was writing I'm basically going to just welcome 100% love, 100% connection, 100% worth, 100% in. And there was this little part of me that went, oh wow, that could be scary. Because it is scary sometimes to really embrace the fullness of what we can actually have in our world. We want it, but it's kind of scary because we've not necessarily always had it. But we can. It's definitely possible to do it. So when I wrote Making Sense of the Insensible and I started teaching it, what I started to find myself realizing was that I loved patterns. I really liked seeing patterns, identifying patterns, and fixing patterns. And patterns were kind of like awesome. And so while everyone's going like, oh, we've got to get rid of all those patterns in your life and clear all that stuff, I'm like going, yeah, but like it's amazing how we have these patterns, and it's awesome. And so I started basically going, I want to find an effective way to unlock those patterns. That's what my work is about. That's what I really like to do. And so I kept saying to the universe, come on, I need a tapping script. I need something that will just unlock it. And I'm a naturopath, and so I'm a big believer and see the link between our physical, the way our physical body works. So that whole, I always get back, as above, so below. Well, as inside, as outside. Do you mean? I have this whole, how our body works reflects the way our life goes. And so I started kind of mulling in my brain going, what if I was to take what I see in these patterns and put it into my physical body, what part of my body is this pattern representing? And I'd started to get like the card deck and all that kind of stuff had come, and I wasn't willing to publish it, and I wasn't willing to even write a book until I had a script that would unlock that pattern. And so I started to realize that there's actually a part in our brain. So if we look at the addictive cycle in our brain, it actually has this cascade effect that once we've got a trigger, it cascades and triggers and triggers and triggers and triggers a certain pattern. And that's how we end up doing what we do. So actually, I think I probably jumped a couple of slides, but that's fine. So I did the Box of Inner Secrets, and I put it out, I published it, I got the script, and I actually was day one in Jordan at the Dead Sea, and should have probably had jet lag and been sleeping for a while, but I didn't. I was awake quite early at 5 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and the entire script was there. I wrote it down, I tapped it, and was like, oh wow, this is brilliant. I texted it to my friend Erin, who's on this call, and said, Erin, this is awesome, you need to use it. Did you use it, Erin? No. She was like, oh yeah, whatever. And when I got back, I said, did you do it? She goes, no. And then, but ever since she has, you've been using it lots since, haven't you?
Yep, it's changed my world.
Yes. So then I was ready to write the book. Then I was ready to put it out. And I felt really enthusiastic. I was like, this is it. I've got this deck of cards that people can identify exactly what their core need is. All the, we can get right into the unconscious part of it, lay it right there. I'm going to write the description in the book. I'm going to put a tapping script in. No deck of cards has ever had a full book with all the how to fix it in it. I was excited. And I put it out there. And then I discovered that people had the book. They played with the cards. They loved the cards. They were, oh my God, Leonie, the cards that come up, it's spot on. Amazing. It's incredible. So spot on. Awesome. Did you do the tapping? Oh, no. Did you read the description? Oh, yeah. How did it know? Why did that card come out for me? Because that's what happens, because that's the issue inside of you, and your intuition, your energy pulls the card out. That's what happens. Do you mean? And so this awareness started to happen that basically people got stuck in the intellectual process. So you know what that means now. They start wanting to know the why, the where, the what, the how. How did this deck know? And they were so fascinated by the fact that the card came out and it was exactly how they felt, but they didn't take the next step. They didn't do the tapping. And the tapping, seriously, when you do it by yourself, is a 5-minute process. It is actually quite quick. I mean, we can insert our own personal bits and it can be a little longer, but what's in the book is 5 minutes worth. And so then they'd be upset a couple of days later and they'd draw the card and the same card had come out. Because they were still feeling the same thing because they hadn't fixed it yet. They hadn't done the next step. And so they were, same card came out again. And so they're in that kind of process. So it started to kind of get to the point where it was like, I guess the thing is that they're like, why does this keep happening? And the reality is that our need-fear cycle is addictive, right? The resolution empowerment tapping script that I've created, or more to the point, was given to me to share with the world. It breaks this addiction. But first of all, we've got to understand that when we go through the process, we will intellectualize it. We'll want to get stuck in that emotion, that intellectual process. And once our emotion is named, we kind of don't feel so stressed about it because we go, that's exactly how I feel. How did it do that? And then we intellectualize it. So naming the emotion helps it release in terms that we don't feel so stressed anymore. And so then people are not necessarily taking the next step and doing the next part of the process. So it is logical, don't get me wrong, it's completely normal that our logical brains want to make sense of our reality because that's what it actually does. But the other part of it is also comfy because we know it. And it's not necessarily logical to say, we're not logically choosing to stay stuck in the pattern. We're not. Because who wants to be in pain? No. Can we do a drop our hand down? Nobody wants to be in pain. Do you mean? Nobody wants to be stuck in pain. But we have to understand the way in which the brain works, the way the addiction, so the addictive part of our need-fear cycle is that it just keeps circling through the same process. So we've got to go in and actually do it. And like I said before, it is also very scary to be our best self. And so we keep doing what we know. All right. And we have to step out of it. And I can't help myself but to help people. It's in just my being of doing all of that. And so once I started to realize that people loved the cards, loved how clarifying it was for them, enjoyed getting it, but just didn't quite know how to take the next step, or didn't quite want to do the tapping on their own, weren't quite there in terms of that kind of stuff, I started then realizing I needed to run some workshops. I needed to run some bits and pieces, and that led to today, running a webinar. Because as much as I've said, we don't have to do things, it's not true that we have to fix things instantly. The amazing thing about the resolution empowerment tapping script is it does the hard work for us. It really, because of the words that are in the script, and I'm hoping you may have guessed already, like we've tapped the words, this sets off a cascade of emotionally painful experiences in my mind's reality. That actually taps into the addictive part of the brain, because that's exactly what our addiction does. Any addiction is a repeating pattern. Something we keep doing over and over again is an addiction. So our emotions are addictive. not just our chocolate eating or our alcohol drinking or our cigarette smoking or our gambling or our other, the addictions we know, but we get addicted to our emotional processes. And so the language, the way in which the script is written, it actually unlocks that part of the brain so we can then shift out of it. And that's why I use words like I already am, because when we put that back in and say I already am in the positive, what actually happens is that part of the brain says, oh, I don't need to run this story anymore. And so we can step out of it. So as I said, I was actually going to offer a 8-week program, but unfortunately my mum has had a diagnosis from a doctor just this last week, which I've got to be there for her because I have to do that. I need to do that because that's who I am. So the possibility, I didn't want to offer something that I may then had to delay. So that to me, my responsibility part just meant I couldn't necessarily say, I'll offer this and then see what happens. So if there is anybody that would like to work intensely with me and do like a block of a 2-hour kind of session and really dig in. And so what it would mean is we would probably look at picking one thing and say, let's have a look at that need, fear, and do an intense amount of tapping, and I'll pluck it out. And if you don't know me or you don't know that, so I like my skill to find stuff. Erin, you might want to jump in and throw in a little aha or something, so that the way in which I work, the things that my intuition, my empathic abilities, my experiences of knowledge, my academic knowledge, my years of work experience, just everything that combines to be me. I can hear people's stories in such a way that I can really pinpoint the nitty-gritty. Like I said earlier, I'm deep and meaningful. I don't do shallow, and I can see through lots of things, both through hearing the words but sensing it and feeling it as well. So if somebody would like to do a one-on-one and go through that really deep, help me fix this thing, Leonie, and I'm going to say it honestly, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to fix every single aspect we can find right in that time, and 2 hours is a lot of time. 2 hours is going to really peel away a lot of garbage and a lot of stuff that keeps you stuck and lost. So it's going to be really full on. You probably need to sleep afterwards, and if I guess it's the kind of, can I be really honest and say this to you? If you are willing to unleash me on you,
She will change your world.
Do you want to chat? Do you want me to do my thing? Do you mean? Which I kind of love doing. And I know, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be brave enough to do it. And I will be gentle, and I am a kind person. I will be gentle with you, but I will pull and push and pull and hug, and do you mean? We will extract. In 2 hours, you will be surprised what I can extract out of you. Using the tapping, so in the book, there's the resolution and power and tapping strips. There's actually a variety of adaptions. So I will bring everything that I have into that session to just unlock everything I possibly can. So it'll be very full on. Erin was my guinea pig. I love Erin. Erin was my friend who said, I'm putting my hand up and you can practice on me. So Erin has gone through this journey in terms of, before I was willing to put things to print, I really wanted to know it was going to work, and I wanted to see what it could actually do. And Erin, I think it's pretty safe to say the person you are today is a very, very different person to the person you were a year or two ago, even 6 months ago.
Absolutely life-changing.
Yeah.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
I can't say it enough, that this process, and you give yourself patience, be gentle, be kind to yourself, and just, be willing to be, open. It's just amazing. It's life-changing. Yeah. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. And I think part of what I would want to do for anyone who does want to do that intense session with me, we will pick one thing and really dig into that and go for it, right? What I would hope at the end of that is that I will have given you enough confidence as well that you can start using the cards and the tapping processes that are in the book to start peeling some bits off and work through things and be able to get past the stuckness, get past feeling confused and overwhelmed and lost, so that you'll have the confidence to really start to utilize the tool that's been created here, because it is a truly amazing, I feel incredibly honored and privileged that it got given to me to share with the world, because it really does work. Even with the work, even what it's done in my own world is just been amazing. So I'm willing to just give you my heart and soul to help clean something, remove something. So I'm going to be really naughty because I'm hopeless at marketing. Can I just say that out loud? And if Karen kind of ever watches, she'll growl at me for saying this, and I'm sorry, Karen, but I just can't. So don't tell her that I said this. Right? Karen told me that this is how much I had to charge. Oh, it doesn't want to come up. This is an interesting thing, isn't it? Oh, look, there it is. It's finally come up. Okay, somehow I've lost everybody. Okay, Karen told me I had to tell you that it was this price. And I said to Karen that I just can't do it for that price because it doesn't, I'm not good at it. So for 2 hours of my time, and the reality is, I can promise you now, if at 2 hours we haven't quite finished, it takes 2.5 hours. I'm not going to just stop at 2 hours because I'm not good at being able to do that either. I basically feel very comfortable to say that if you want to do a 2-hour thing for $297, you will have my heart and soul, and I'll give you everything I've got, and we will dig in and solve and basically be able to clear. There we go, that worked. Clear away the stuff that's actually there so that you can actually do it. So I know Karen's saying to me, you are worth $497, Leonie, don't sell yourself short. And I don't feel like I'm selling myself short. I just feel that right now I'm probably more comfortable at that zone. And maybe that's called, and maybe in a year's time I will say, yes, I can do it for $500. But right now I feel comfortable to say that money will be well spent and you will get a huge shift. So if that is something that interests you and you want to be able to do it, you can. In terms of realities of commitment time, and again, this is not a very good marketing tool, I realise, and again, I hope Karen doesn't growl at me when she hears it. I leave for India on Tuesday. I know, I'm not good at it, but I leave for India on Tuesday. So in some respects, I'm supposed to create urgency right now and tell you that this offer is going to evaporate and I'll start next Wednesday. And if you don't decide to buy right now, it's never going to be available. But it's not going to start until I get back from India. So, there is the opportunity here. It depends on what you've got. You can buy my book of box of Inner Secrets and have a play and have a look. You can buy, the book of the Making Sense of the Insensible. You can say, yes, I want it, and you can say right now and say, yes, Leonie, I'm in there. I want to do that, and I'm willing to put my hand up and commit to that. When you get back from India in 3 weeks' time, we'll set a time and we will work with that. We can do it here online. If you live closer, we can do it in person. I'm not fussed the source in which we do it. But the reality, of course, is that, the offer is there, and I've failed my marketing urgency thing. Because the problem is I feel like I'll lie to you if I tell you that it's going to disappear. Do you mean? The reality is it's here for a few days. Do you mean? I've put it onto the leonieblackball.com. It's in my store. It's there. It is limited to 5 people because that's probably all that part is truth. That part's not a marketing scheme. That part is truth. The bottom line is, for the time that I have and the things that are going to go, I realistically, I'm only going to offer it to 5 people, but it is going to be there. And the reality for me is, if you want it now, dive in. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you think, well, I will do it, and, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what the rest of those words are. Whatever.
Stop talking and put a link in the chat.
Right. Thank you, Jody. See, Jody knows his stuff. Okay, now this will be a new learn thing for me. Hang on, what if I do this? Oh, hang on, can't do that. I'll do this because I know how to do this, and then I'll do the next part. All right. So, oh, maybe not. Hang on. There we go. Did that work? Okay, I'll do this. I'll go to here and I'll go to me, right? And did I do it right? It's a bit slow. All right. So, internet looks good. I'm not sure. Oh, there it is. Okay. Store. Then we go to webinar sessions. And there it is. So I will do that. Copy. Go out of there. Come back to, oh, hang on. Stop share. Here we go. Into the chat there. Is that what we do? Right. And here we go. And we paste. Awesome. There you go. So that's the link that will take you directly to there for being able to do it. Well, that was exciting. I don't know how you felt about that, but I was a bit excited. That worked. Awesome. Okay. So
it did work.
It did work. So there it is. So yes. So I would love to do. I mean, for me personally, I think it would be exciting to work with people on a really deep and meaningful, pull stuff apart. I think that would be really exciting to be able to work with stuff with people. So I'd love the opportunity to do that. So, but if anyone's got any questions, that is the official end of it. On the same store, there's, my books and everything is all there. I can post them out if need be. I guess realistically, when I do the talks, I often make a bit of an offer where you can get a bit of everything. I can always set that up if people think, yes, I'd like to buy more things. I want the box and your book and stuff. I usually do all 3 books for $85 instead of just $60 for the box and $25 for the book and $25 for the other. So I can't even do the maths fast enough. Jodie, you're good at maths, but that works out to be a reasonably good price. So that's always possible as well. If people want that, I can create that. So, but thank you. It's been good. I got through my first webinar.
Yay!
So thank you for being there with me and supporting me, and hopefully you have noticed the shift and you can feel something different in from just the tapping we've done. And if that just opens I like this stuff and I'd like to work with Leonie, then please, I'd love that opportunity to help you resolve some stuff. So thank you. I'm now looking at the time. I can see a clock, so we have gone a little bit over, but that wasn't too bad. Any questions? No? Everyone's good? Does everyone do you feel different now compared to the beginning?
Perfect timing for my workshop tomorrow.
Well, yes, that's a good point. Very good. Yeah. Helen?
I think there's a bit of a difference, but I need to wait. I mean, I did that tapping session with you at the Mind, Body, Spirit, and I think that actually did help. But I think it takes a little bit of time to see if how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I do say you'll get a bit of a shift now. It'll shift over the day. Sleep time is really important because that's where the rewiring, and it does really unfold. And I know there was one of the Mind, Body, Spirit talks I gave last year. One lady came in and she said 2 days later she was still feeling the shift. So she'd done on the Friday, I saw her on the Sunday, and she said every day. So it will just unlock and unlock and unlock. And Erin and I have often had conversations. And just this week we had a conversation, she'd done a tapping, and all of a sudden her mind just thought a whole lot of things she'd never really thought before, didn't it? And we're like, it all just unlocked and allowed stuff.
I've got so many different words popping into my head. Like I grew up being told that I had a language disability and I couldn't read and write and all this sort of stuff. But we're doing this tapping, and the more that I do it, have words that are popping into my head that I didn't even know existed, and I'm looking up the meaning and I'm like, oh my God, that is so relevant to what's going on. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Helen. Sleep on it, have a rest. And that's probably why, in terms of the marketing part of it is, you know, I think people have to feel it. It's got to be something you go, this has shifted something. One of the things I would say, when you personalize the tapping script and we insert your stuff in, the shift is amazing. Obviously, within what's in the book is some general stuff that we all experience, but in personalising it, it's incredible. And some of the little adaptations unlock stuff even more. So some of that stuff may be really, really perfect for you to be able to, you know, that would really flesh it all out. Because obviously in this situation, I can't find out your nitty-gritties, but if we did, you'll probably find a much greater shift will actually come from that. So, but yeah, but sleep on it, see how it goes. Sorry, someone's talking, but it's a bit staggered.
Yeah, my computer's more funny now.
Yeah, it's got a bit funny with that. But yeah, so, but you've got my email address as well. You can make contact if we need to. If there's anything you want clarity about, please, you know, let me know and see what we can do. But yes, and thank you, Jody. I'm glad you're in. That would be awesome. We'll work through lots of stuff. It'll be good. So yeah. So thank you. Thank you for being with me on my first one. I started nervous, but I feel kind of chilled at this point in time and like, wow, that wasn't actually so hard. And I actually quite enjoy the whole process. So it's been great. So thank you very much. And have a beautiful day. It's looking quite nice out there. So,
yeah, it is.
Yeah. And good luck with tomorrow, Jody.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yes. So, all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
And